This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're at the Devonian Botanic Garden, and I'm with the manager, Maureen Bedford. Whereabouts is the Devonian located?
Ed, it's just about a half an hour's drive from downtown Edmonton. We're literally just down the street and around the corner.
And what part of the garden are we in?
Right now we're standing in the almost the center of the Kurimoto Japanese Garden. It's a very large Japanese garden and certainly one of our premier exhibits.
Sure. When was the garden established?
This particular garden was opened in 1989, and so in terms of Japanese gardens, it's a relative babe in the woods.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one of the few Japanese gardens in Alberta, isn't it?
It is. Of this caliber and this size, the only other Japanese garden that is of that kind of quality is in Lethbridge.
How many acres does the garden alone contain?
The Japanese garden is 5 acres, and the rest of the Botanic Garden is actually 80 acres of display garden. So we're very, very proud of this facility.
You know, our camera crew and producers right away thoroughly enjoyed another part of the garden too, and that's the butterfly.
Oh, right,
garden.
yes, and a lot of groups, children, people of all ages, the young at heart, really enjoy the butterfly house.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about it. You actually reproduce butterflies in the house, don't you?
Actually, we're very, very fortunate because we have about 5 species that are actually breeding in the house, which is quite remarkable considering the extreme temperatures that we have in this environment.
And what's so neat too is that the people can actually walk through the butterfly
Absolutely.
house.
It's really a wonderful feature of the butterfly house because you can walk through it, you can see the butterflies up close and personal.
I think not only that, but you can see all the different stages of butterfly
That's
life
right
as
too,
well.
exactly, the pupae, the larva, and even just the tiny eggs. I hope I get a chance to show it to you.
Yes. Now also here in the garden though, you've got several other features, and tell us just quickly about a few of them.
Just off the top, there's the Alpine Garden, a massive collection of alpine plants from all over the world, as well as our Canadian Rockies. We have the herb gardens, which are interesting because the garden beds actually are sectioned according to the various uses of the plants.
I noticed the perennials, for example, and some grasses, and you have some individual collections.
That's right, the
garden?
theme beds, and they're designed with the visitor in mind to communicate that sort of grouping or that family of plants as they stroll through the garden.
Maureen, there is a nominal admission fee. When is the garden open?
We're open from the beginning of May right through to the middle of October, 7 days a week, and usually at 10 in the morning the garden is open right up till 7 o'clock at night.
Thanks for sharing them with us.
Well, we're so glad you're here today.
Yeah. Even though it's fall, you should be thinking spring, because the tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, and crocus, which flower in springtime, need to be planted this fall. So here are a few tips on how to select the bulbs. For example, this is a daffodil bulb, and in the trade they call this one peak here a nose. So this is what's called a single nose bulb, and this will produce one flower and one flower only. Now, out of the same bin, I selected this bulb, which is called, in the trade again, a double nose bulb. Now on average, this bulb will produce 1.5 flowers, and we know bulbs don't produce a half a flower, but if you have 2 bulbs, for example, you should get 3 flowers on average. Now, out of the same bin, I selected this one, and you can see there's 1 nose, there's 2, and there's 3. So the triple nose bulbs will average 2 flowers per bulb. And they're all out of the same bin. They cost exactly the same amount of money. So when you're shopping, why not look for the triple nose bulbs and see if you can find them. They're a much better investment for you. Now, also, here are some tulips. These have the skin on them. And sometimes you'll find in the nurseries and the garden centers those that do not have the skins on them. It really doesn't make any difference. So the important thing though is to look to see that the bulbs are firm. And I have a good example right here, again going back to the daffodils. All you need to do is just squeeze this a little. Don't squeeze it hard, but just a little, and you can see right away that this one's mushy. It's no good. So by all means, don't buy that bulb. Now, I couldn't find any hyacinths in the garden center when I went shopping yesterday, but the important thing I can very briefly tell you is with hyacinths, use small bulbs in the garden. If you're forcing them, use the large bulbs, and you can save yourself some money that way. And look what else I found when I was in the garden center yesterday. Cochicum. Looks like a crocus, doesn't it? It is. It's the fall, or what's often called the autumn crocus. And this is the most popular, but they come in other colors too. You can plant these right now because is what happens in springtime. The foliage comes up, it dies down, and then in the fall comes this beautiful crocus flower. A great plant to add in the garden. And then one other last word about bulbs, and that is this. This is the amaryllis. And you can see it flowered this spring and now it had the foliage. Right now is the time that you put this away. Quit watering it, fertilizing it, don't give it any care whatsoever. Let the foliage die back naturally, clip it back at that point, and then just let the bulb store for, about a month or so. In other words, the whole process takes about 3 months, then you can start it all over again. Give those bulbs the attention they need now. The spring flowering bulbs are really easy to plant, but here are a few hints to make it maybe a little bit easier for you. First of all, how deep do you plant the bulbs? I'm going to, by the way, in the front of this bed, plant dwarf tulips, really low growing ones. But usually is what you determine is the diameter of the bulb, or the width of the bulb. And the distance between my thumb and forefinger, for example, is the diameter of the bulb, and it's basically about 1.5 inches. Multiply that by 3. So this bulb should be planted about 4.5 inches deep, or a little bit deeper. Now the Dutch sometimes also measure it this way, which they call to the peak or to the nose of the bulb. And in this particular case, it's very, very similar. So the planting depth, once again, is about 4.5 to 5 inches deep. So either way you can use. Now, the important thing is to properly prepare the soil. That's the key. Because insects like bulbs. So we'll add a little bit of soil dust, actually bulb dust, to the planting area. And I'll also add a little bit of bulb fertilizer. Now you can use any kind of bulb fertilizer that's not too high in nitrogen. And then mix those in well in the planting hole. And you can see the depth is about, in this particular case, 4.5, maybe 5 inches deep. Now the placement of the bulbs is also very important. See, I like to plant them this way. You can plant them individually if you want. In fact, some people just throw them out over the soil and plant them wherever they land. And in a naturalized planting, that's really a good way to do it. But I like to dig one hole and put a lot of bulbs. That way then, as my wife comes on in springtime and the bulbs are in bloom, she can pick 1 or 2 and it doesn't spoil the display in the garden at all. So we put a bulb here, and we'll put one, but so they do not touch each other. We don't want them to touch. And the reason for that is that if they touch, if one of them gets a disease or begins a rot, it can be passed to the other. So by leaving a little bit of space between the bulbs, then it's much, much better. And in this case, I'm going to plant a whole dozen, actually it's 10, excuse me, in this planting hole. I bought these by the tens. All the bulbs are pointed end up. That's really important because sometimes we tend to plant them the wrong way and then we into a little bit of trouble. They still will bloom, but it's pointed end is up on almost all bulbs that you plant into the garden. And then all we need to do is simply pull the soil in over the top. And over this top area then, if you wanted to, is what you could plant is winter flowering pansies or kale or cabbage or something of that nature for a little bit of color during the winter season. It's that easy, and right now is a perfect time to plant out those tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, and crocus. We're in St. Albert, Alberta, Canada, and I'm with home gardener Mary Victor. And Mary, you've done a beautiful job here. How long have you been gardening?
We've been here about 4 years. Moved in last August. 4 years it'll be in August, yeah.
And I understand your husband really doesn't like to cut grass.
No, he doesn't. That's why we have all rock and plants that are grown in containers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the techniques that you've used here. You've enclosed each of the beds so nicely with a nice walkway in between.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I can come out here in the rain and it doesn't track the mud in.
That's right. Yeah. A good point, isn't it?
I want you to pay attention to the scalloping. My husband made that out of cedar.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, what a lot of work, but how nice it looks at the same time.
turned out.
Here in the garden also, you've incorporated the combination of vegetables and flowers.
Yes, yes, because I do love flowers and I need the vegetables.
Yes, and
Yeah.
what a nice combination. Now, from this area, let's quickly go up to the front because you've done a beautiful job up there. What is that, stones that you've used there in the gravel?
Those are the slate stones. They come from the rock beds in the mountains. Yeah.
What a nice combination. And there you've used a few of the evergreens along with the...
That's right.
And you've used
Yeah.
some perennials?
Yes, we have.
And
We're trying to incorporate more perennials into here. It's a little less costly and less work.
Yeah, and then I noticed on the other side of the house you have some more vegetables.
Yes, tomatoes and zucchini.
Oh, wow.
They love the sun.
Yes.
And we don't get too much sun in this area.
Oh, I see.
So we
Now,
put them over there.
back behind me, I noticed that you've got some vegetables as well, but you have tomatoes in containers. Mm-hmm. Is that the best way to grow them here in St. Albert?
I don't know if it's the best way, but for me it works because I can take them in when the frost comes and they'll ripen off in the house.
Oh, okay.
Last year we had very good luck with them that way.
Now, when do you plant most of these?
About May 24th weekend,
Okay.
it comes out into the garden.
The Victoria weekend, is that what they call it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the combination of the foliage textures and the flowers, you must have done considerable planning on that.
I read a lot of books.
Okay. Is that where you get your ideas?
That's
really?
where I get my ideas, is seed catalogs, books, and gardening books. Yeah.
Yeah, and the techniques that you've used really are outstanding. And I notice in under the deck that you've got a little private area
Yes, we
there.
do. That's where we relax after the chores are done in the garden.
Isn't it? What
Yeah.
a neat idea. You've got everything in the garden is nicely
Yeah.
planned. You've done really a superb
Well,
job.
thank you.
And thank you for sharing the garden with us. Next, we're going to talk about using hardscaping and waterscaping to enhance the quality of the time we spend at home. As the world continues to become more frantic around us, the popularity of soothing water features is on the rise. I'm with hardscape specialist Darcie Beck. Darcie, what was the inspiration to do this?
Well, Ed, this area was originally the walls, the steps, were made out of old railroad ties. The railroad ties were beginning to disintegrate. There was a chance that the wall might slip. It wasn't very inviting. The patio was gravel, and we wanted to create something that would be fun to be in, you know, more usable. And so this is what we created.
Yeah, this is kind of the entry area to the home too, isn't it?
It's one of the entry areas of the home, yes.
Yeah. And they say, 85% of the people get an impression of your home before they ever step inside the front door. So what a neat inspiration this is. Now, you've combined a combination of rock and slate. Why do you use this material?
Well, we wanted something that was natural. We chose basalt for its strength, durability, easy to install, relatively so, and mica slate because of the combination of colors. It was a perfect blend.
Perfect combination.
Right.
Now, the water feature is beautiful, and was this a part of the original plan?
Actually, it wasn't, Ed. Originally, we were going to do this area that you see here. And when we finished, we looked at this side area and decided that, it would really be nice to hear the sound of running water and create a water feature here, and that's what got us going in that direction.
I love the sound of water, and Darcie, it seems like such a natural thing to do, and you've used water so effectively in so many landscapes.
Well, thank you, Ed. They don't all have to be as elaborate as this, but a simple pond in the backyard with a little waterfall, or even some of the bigger ponds, they're just nice to have in your environment. And water is it's a wonderful soothing, relaxing element.
And where you've used it so effectively with hardscaping as well, it makes it a very usable part of the landscape, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and water has been used in the landscape for centuries. Clear back to Roman times, they've used water to soothe and relax and inspire.
Thanks, Darcie. I hope this has given you some ideas where you can use water along with hardscaping in your own landscape. I want to share with you today 4 plants of the week. Look at the beautiful astelbe. If you have a shaded spot in the garden, or at least a place that's protected from the hot midday sun, this is a great plant to use. Comes in a wide variety of colors, plus the foliages very often are different. Some are bronze, some are even red in color. Really very, very attractive. And some are much lower growing. In fact, there's some dwarf varieties. And so for a shaded spot of the garden, this is great. This is one of my wife's favorite plants as a cut flower too. Very, very attractive. And you can use the foliage as a filler as well. Astelbe, it's a type of spirea. And then right next to me here is another plant that we talked about earlier in the season. This is, of course, the escallonia. Now, it's almost through its flowering cycle, but I wanted to show it to you because of the dark green foliage and the flowers that still remain even this late into the season. Because very often we're looking for plants that are evergreen and that do provide color later into the season. And the escallonia is a good one. Does very well by the seashore, by the way. And there's several different colors once again. This is a rose flowered variety. And then down here, when I showed this to you as a plant of the week earlier, Abelia is the plant. It wasn't in bloom, but I wanted to show you not only it in bloom, but also the beautiful new foliage, kind of bronze in color. Now this is semi-evergreen, meaning that it will lose some of its foliage over winter, but it keeps some of the foliage too. And it flowers usually from June up until frost, so it has a very, very long flowering season, takes full, hot, bright sun very nicely. And then look at this one. This is Homestead Purple Verbena. And these have been in the nursery and they've been forced too close together, so they're growing up. It actually spreads out beautifully in the garden. So those are my choice for plants of the week. The beautiful astelbe, the escallonia, abelia, and Homestead Purple Verbena. We're at Olds College in Olds, Alberta, Canada, specialists in agriculture, horticulture, the environment, and land usage. And I'm with instructor Donna Balzer. We're going to talk about taxonomy. Donna, what is taxonomy?
That's how we sort out what's what. You go out, you look in your garden, maybe you don't care. Is it a rose or is it a petunia? Millions of people out there do care. And so taxonomy is the whole science of classification. We figure out what things are.
What is the value to the student?
Well, last year they learned hundreds of plants. And I thought they had them really well learned. And by the time summer was over, they had forgotten most of them. So now I'm teaching them taxonomy, which gives them a guide that they can keep looking up things. They don't have to memorize everything.
Oh.
The number of plants in the world, it's going to be tough to memorize everything. So we give them a chance to work through a key, and they can figure it out on their own after school's out.
Sure. How is the program structured?
Well, we're almost always in the lab. We go outside and collect up some of our native plants or things that we see growing that may appear to be wild. We bring them in, throw them under the mic, and have the students work through and figure out just what that plant is. And it can be quite challenging. They have to look at all these picky little flower parts. Yes. And, it's tough for them at first. They finally get onto the lingo and the course wraps up.
Sure. What is the length of study for that?
It's only 35 hours, which is a pretty short course here.
Yeah.
I know there are people that have a PhD in taxonomy. It certainly can go a lot further than that, but we've just got a real short course. It's just an introduction using our native flora.
Sure. How do you determine their level of proficiency?
Well, every couple of days we have a quiz, and the quiz is there's a plant under your mic. We want to know what it is, and I mark them on that. If they can get right to the final answer, they get full marks, and it's docked back from there.
Now, do they do, in addition to the lab work, do they do field work too?
Well, they'll go out. We'll have some days where we're out hiking, and they'll have to find a plant from a family that we've already learned, or they'll have to find a plant they don't know at all, and then they'll have to bring it back to class the next day and work through it. So it's pretty practical. They should be able to take this out into their career with them.
Sure. Now they can't take the microscopes out into the field. How do they do the work in the field?
Well, once they recognize those main parts, we try to get them to look under the mic to, all the picky little parts.
Sure.
But once they recognize those, you can actually see most of them with your naked eye once you know what you're looking for. And if not, you can get a little 8-power hand lens. And I recommend that for home gardeners. You should have a little 8-powered hand lens. You can look at the bugs in your garden. You can look at those flower parts. It's a good way to just sort of refresh your memory, and you can carry it in your pocket.
Oh, exactly. Thanks for sharing the information about the college. This is a great college for anyone interested in horticulture or agriculture, anything that has to do with the environment or with land use as well. That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time next time for Gardening in America. And remember, our relationship with the planet today is tomorrow's future. Have a great week.